Yeah, and I think, that passage not only can be applicable to their relationship with Christ, but I also think it's applicable to life situations, right? Um, is that in your budget? And he said, yeah. I said, is it a good deal? And which is crazy about this vlog, that someone that is quiet, reserved, and an introvert.
I think it's maybe just a mindset of like, okay, this is just a game. Hey y'all, good morning. Welcome back to another vlog, car chat series. If y'all haven't had a chance, we did our first car chat, what was that, maybe 2 vlogs ago. I'll try to link it somewhere in the cards up here so y'all can go back and watch it. It was called friendships, creating friendships as adults, something like that. Yeah. So anyway, y'all, we decided to start doing these car chat series just about different topics and, things that we've been through in our life, and thought it would be good to kind of, share it with y'all and get feedback from you guys, and, we can kind of learn and grow together. So today's car chat series is called Letting Grow Without Letting Go, Young Adults Edition. Yeah. So we're gonna jump right in, y'all.
And we're just talking our experiences, so we're not professionals by any stretch of the imagination, other than what we've seen and done in our own lives, and some of the stuff that's worked. So for what it's worth, like my wife said, we'll grow together with this.
Yeah.
I guess not.
So y'all, we just out running some errands, so we thought it'd be a good time to kind of dive into this car chat series this morning. Like I said, welcome back to another vlog. Happy Saturday. Hope you guys are having a good day. If you're watching this morning, afternoon, evening, I hope you're having a good one. Thanks for joining us. My name is Shay. You're watching Ohheyshaylife, and this is my husband, CJ. So, yeah, y'all, let's get into it.
Yeah, and some context behind this is what we realized is sometimes parents struggle with letting their children go the older that they get. And so, yeah, we thought it'd be interesting to talk about how do you let them grow through life without necessarily hindering that process, but also not leaving them out there flapping in the wind, so that they can maybe make a mistake bigger than what's necessary.
Yeah.
I think one thing that comes to my mind when I think about this, because I coached my boys growing up in football and basketball, and I remember one time when I had to go overseas, my son was playing football and I was his coach, and I was only going for about a couple of weeks. But I remember my wife called me and she was like, hey, your son said he ain't playing football anymore because you're his coach, and if you're not here, then he don't want to play. So he was ready for her to take him and turn all his equipment in. And so when I got on the phone, I remember sharing these words with him. I was like, son, everything that I know that I think is applicable to your age, I've given you. And I was like, you just have to put that into practice. I bring that story up because I'm like, why does it work in coaching, but we struggle with seeing the relevance of it in life situations?
Y'all, there's an ambulance passing by. Hold on.
I think that's appropriate because it helps us understand that when we let them go, it's not an emergency. Like, it's an opportunity for them to grow.
How fitting.
That's why I talk about that turn right there. So always jumps on.
Yeah.
What do you think, babe? Thoughts on that?
What'd you say, Ken?
Talking about why does it work in coaching where we allow them to get on the field or the court and put into application the things that we've taught them, and we're willing to allow them to make some of the mistakes on a field or a court, but when it comes to life, we want to shield them from everything?
I think it's maybe just a mindset of like, okay, this is just a game. You know what I mean? Like, this is just something that is really not that big of a deal, especially like at the time when they were playing when they were young. We're just like, oh, okay, it's just a football game, like, or it's just a basketball game or something like that. But when you start thinking about life issues and stuff like that, I think we kind of want to hold the reins a little bit tighter, probably because we've been through what they're going to go through. And so we kind of want to shield them from that. Like, okay, well, when I was 18, I did these things, and man, I wish that, somebody would have said, okay, don't do that or whatever. And so you kind of want to shield them. Like, okay, I don't want them to go through that because I went through that and it hurt or it was tough. And so I think that's probably why we kind of hold the reins a little bit tighter, is because we've already experienced that part of life. Does that make sense?
No, it makes sense to me, and I get it. What do y'all think about, do we do that when it comes to life situations because we're protecting them from the mistakes we made?
Mm-hmm.
Do we do it because we think that there are more repercussions with life mistakes than there is on a football field or a basketball? Or is it that the principles, regardless of the context in which you apply it, it still works, right? So if I've given them life lessons, or you've given your kids life lessons, how do they know that those life lessons are effective if we protect them from ever trying them out?
Yeah. Yes, we have to trust that what we've already given them is going to help them through those life situations. And maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's the trusting part.
Trust is huge. And I think y'all know a little bit about our background of we're Christians, people of faith. Because there's a passage in Proverbs that talks about train up a child in the way that they should go. When they get older, they will not part from it. Right now, in that specific context, it's talking about their relationship with Christ. But I also think it's applicable to life situations, right? If we've trained them up to be able to deal with some things, not necessarily everything that they're going to face, but I think there are some certain principles that can be applied to different situations, right? Like in terms of teaching them about responsibility. I think that also can bleed over into financial management. I think it also can bleed into decision making, certain things like that. And sometimes when I feel that parents get so involved in it that it can make the kids over-reliant or overly dependent to where it will paralyze them from ever even trying to put some of these tools into practice. Does that make sense, y'all?
Yeah, that makes sense. And I know just from a mom's perspective, for me, that was hard. Just kind of understanding, because my husband would always tell me, like, okay, babe, you're gonna have to try to pull it back a little bit because I'm trying to raise men here, And once he said that, I was like, okay, wow, because they're gonna have to be able to go out in the world and, once they find their significant others and stuff, they're gonna have to be able to lead in that way, like the way that God has called the man to lead, and to be the man of the household. So, once he told me that, I was like, okay, wow, that was like a real big eye opener for me. Like, okay, I gotta pull it back a little bit and let him, do the hard things, teach them the hard things without mommy coming in like, oh, those are my babies, and still have that, because I think that's a good balance to have. Like, they need to know that emotional side and stuff like that I can give them, but it's very important that I don't overpower that, where they get to the point where it's just like, okay, they can't do anything for themselves because mom is kind of just I don't know, been like a hover mom kind of all their lives. So
but I think that's part of the letting grow without letting go, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the part of the balance.
Yeah.
because especially us, 3 boys, right? And so dads are typically going to be a little bit harsher on their boys because they know what awaits them and the responsibility that they're going to have to take up. But I think it's also important for them to know that although they're growing, that there are going to be some situations where your parents are not going to be able to let go or not ready to let go at that specific point in time because you haven't reached the maturity level or the maturation process has not been fully developed for you to be able to handle certain situations. And I know the question is probably like, well, what situations are you talking about? Right? I think some of those are in terms of like purchasing a vehicle, preparing to get a house, some things about relationships, right? Like sometimes you're not mature enough to be able to see things that your parents can see, right? And so I think the role in letting grow without letting go in terms of those things is to take it in small pieces, right? Like in terms of financial management, I remember one time we were going to a WNBA game, and I remember talking to my son about a budget. So he had some money, and so I said, son, what's your budget? And he said $20 for the game. And I said, okay. And so we get to the game and we get to the concession stand, and he was buying some candy or something, but I remember the candy was like $4 or $5 for a pack that you could get for like $1 at the dollar store. And so I said, is that in your budget? And he said, yeah. I said, is it a good deal? And he said, well, no. And I said, yeah. I said, but sometimes, if you establish a budget, you can stick within your budget, right? But what I learned in that process is that he ended up buying the candy, not to speak, and I said, okay, he hasn't matured enough to realize that I can establish a budget, but there's also parameters within my budget to where I can expand my budget, or I can get more bang for my buck, no pun intended. I can get more bang for my buck if I operate within deals or in discounts or in sales in that budget. So after the game, what I did is I took him to the dollar store, and the same thing that he bought for $4 or $5. When we get to the dollar store, he's like, man, I could have bought like 5 of those for the price that I paid for one, right? And so that's where I learned that, yeah, let him grow, but also without letting go, I can teach him a lesson in that process to where he can say, oh, I have a budget, but in that budget, I can expand my budget if I'm smart with how I spend it. So that's just an example of what I'm talking about of letting, or what we're talking about of letting grow without letting go. Baker, you think of anything else?
Not off the top of my head.
Maybe in terms of from like maybe a mother's perspective, right, of relationships, how they deal with their girlfriends, stuff like that.
I don't get too involved, when it comes to the girlfriends and stuff. I guess I would like to believe that they're going to make good choices based off of what they've seen in me and what they've seen, through our relationship. And so far, they've done that. Y'all, we do have an 18-year-old that is in college right now, and he is dating. He's been dating his girlfriend for a year and a half now. And we love her. So she's a really good girl. She's good for him. So, when it comes to that, I kind of try to stay out of it and let them do their own thing. And just trust that they'll make good choices, like I said, based off of, what they've seen between me and their dad. So. Yeah.
I think one thing that we did try to give him some counsel or some guidance on was, how young people are when they're in love and they're consumed with each other, that they're so consumed with each other that they forget the part of, I still need to figure out who I am. I still need that space to where I'm not going to get burned out, and stuff like that. And there are times where we've totally been hands off to say, okay, you grow through this. But there are times where we start to see where it begins to affect your actions or your moods or your attitudes and stuff like that. And so that's where we have to come in and say, look, it's because you're not giving yourself space to figure out who you are too, and also to do the things that you like to do, or to have avenues. So if there is friction in relationships, because we all know that there are no such thing as a perfect or friction-free relationship. If y'all do, put it in the chats, and y'all will help everyone that's listening to this blog. But you know, so trying to counsel him on, you know, it's okay to, you know, to spend time with your friends. It's okay to have those moments in time where you do something and she goes and does something herself. But you talked about us allowing him to figure things out on his own in teenager talk, right? So when we dug a little deeper, one of the things he talked about was making decisions, or navigating the college life or the college administrative processes on his own, right? And so, like, initially we were hands in, but after he got a little comfortable with being away, being in the setting, and we were like, okay, you know, it's up to you to go talk to your advisors and to schedule your classes and to, you know, deal with the financial matters that are affecting your college and stuff like that. And so he was real appreciative of allowing him to grow in that process. And so I think our role in that was, we planted a seed, we watered it a little bit, but we allowed him to navigate through that process, because the reality of the situation is his college is, you know, several hours away from where we're at, and so we can't run there and do everything for him. And the other thing I think it helped him with was like his people skills, his social skills, his business skills, his interviewing skills, because it forced him to get out of a comfort zone, because he's kind of like my wife, he's kind of reserved, which is crazy about this vlog, that someone that is quiet, reserved, and an introvert can go on with, you know, millions of people in the world and be just free and open and very communicative. And so that's what that helped him with, was establishing those social skills. There was a situation where he dealt with some adversity when we were at another location, and just wanted to, you know, stop fighting. You know, and that's the moment where I said, okay, you got to grow, but you can't grow if you're not willing to go through the process of growth, right? Because anything that grows, something dies. And so for him, it was pride. Pride had to die in order for him to grow. And so I wouldn't let him stop trying. I remember one time the team he was playing for was having a fundraising event, and he was like, I ain't going, because, you know, he was in his feelings. And I said, no, get up, get your stuff, we're going. Right? And so when we got there and we showed up to the fundraiser, and, you know, he started to get involved in it. He started to become active, he started talking to people, and then he realized that the situation was not as bad as he thought it was, because, again, his pride was telling him, I deserve this because of who I am, you know. And so sometimes that growth, you got to go through the process in order to see the growth. So when he faces adversity now, I remember him saying, when he faces adversity now, it's taught him to keep fighting, even though the chips or the odds seem like they're stacked against you.
That was a good teaching moment for him when he went through that. Because I don't think that he'd be able to handle some of the things that he's went through now if he had not gone through that. It's funny how God will allow things to happen in your life to prepare you for things that, you know, will happen in the future. So that's good.
Yeah, and we're focusing a lot of this growth on the kids, but I also think it was growth in us. Because one thing that it taught us is, again, a lot of our frustration or a lot of our consternation, it comes from us lacking trust, not necessarily in the lessons that we're teaching, but lack of trust in the process, right? Or that development phase or the growth phase. And again, you know, going back to our Christian roots, one thing that we have to realize is, like, we pray daily for our kids, and Lord, they're yours. We trust them in your hands. You created them, so you're the designer of how their life's going to turn out. You know, there's even a passage in the Bible that talks about God has equipped us with everything that we need for the journey or for what he has purposed for our life. Right? And sometimes parents can interfere with that process because we are too hands in, or we're not allowing God to deal with them the way that he had to deal with us. And so the growth for us was saying, okay, I can trust that what I've given you, what I've imparted in your life, is enough for you to go forward. And if we're too hands on, then it won't allow us to increase our trust in the lessons or the processes that we've instilled in them, because we're still trying to control every aspect of it, and not understanding that the world that they live in, and y'all probably can attest to this, is not the same world that we saw.
Right. Yeah, they're dealing with things that, I mean, it's just insane when you think about it. But y'all, I wanted to read this passage out of the Bible. It's called the in-between stage. And it says, in the midst of this letting go, parents of adolescents must also remember that God created each child uniquely. Each must be reared with loving attention and encouragement to his or her particular talents, gifts, and personality, with consistent discipline to lead the child God's way, with the faithful example of a consistent Christ-like lifestyle, with godly counsel and advice, and undergirding in prayer. Teens need to realize that they are experiencing a time of great change. They should also cling to the spiritual values that they know to be true. Exercise patience with self and others, and recognize that increased authority over their own lives means responsibility for honoring commitments and making wise choices. God commands children to honor their parents and to obey God's law, regardless of their age.
Yeah,
What do you think about that?
yeah, that's powerful right there. Y'all drop some remarks in the comments on what you think about that.
Oh, there's another good one too. It talks about the transition time. So it says, during this transition time, parents move toward letting go, recognizing that their child has been given in stewardship from the Lord. This letting go gives adolescents room for growth in an atmosphere of parental guidance and influence, as well as accountability. Parents watch their teens move from self-control and then hopefully to God control.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, and that's a powerful passage right there. You know, I think the other part too is that you know, y'all have heard of the term, it takes a community to raise a child. You know, and I think part of the growth process is when parents are too involved, or they're too clingy, or they're not letting go. I think what it also does is it starts to train your child that no one else can help them, right? And we all know that's not the case in life. People need people, and so especially him. I'll go back to the context of my son being in college. You know, if we're always part of that process, what role does the teachers hold? What role do the administrators hold? What role do the counselors and the advisors hold? You know, where is their part in this growth phase for him? How does he interact with them if we've trained him or taught him that, oh, come to us for whatever it is that you need. Go ahead.
I think it also shows that a lack of trust from us, like from his perspective. Like, okay, you know, he may be thinking like, okay, guys, like, you've given this to me, let me go out and execute it, you know, like, trust me that I can do it.
Yeah.
You know, so I think that's a big part of it too. Like, we can't be so just, okay, call me for this, or, you know, something's going on, let me handle it and stuff. Like, no, let him handle it, trust that he can do it, and do it well. So.
Yeah. And if they fail,
yeah,
you know, then
that's
what's the harm?
Right.
Because we can learn lessons one of two ways, right? From positive and negative experience. So if they do fail, so what?
Right.
And it hurts us sometimes. You know, it's gonna hurt the parents, you know, and I know me and my wife talk about what's the husband, what's the dad role, what's the mom role, and all of that. And I think my wife alluded to it a little bit earlier when she was talking about that nurturing aspect. Right, that's something that comes natural to mothers and women, and it's not something that's always so natural to men. right? Because our functions and our responsibilities, we view them as differently, right? And so the Bible is specific when it says, fathers, nurture your children. It never tells a woman to nurture the children because that's something that's inherent to them, but it tells fathers to do so. Because I know for me, there were times where I was like, okay, I grew up with a mom who wanted to do everything for me, and so I knew how it slowed my development or my growth down a little bit. And so with that experience, I was like, I don't want the same for my boys. But I also felt that sometimes in that experience, I could find myself wanting to be too detached in the moments where they would necessarily need me. That's where my wife would come in and say, you can't be that way. There's a balance and stuff like that. And so, yeah, letting grow without letting go. There is that balance of you got to let them grow, but you also can't leave them out there flapping in the wind.
Yeah. This college transition has been just that, a transition. It really has for all of us. It has been, it's better now. He's been in school for a while, so it's better now. But in the beginning, y'all, your girl shed real tears, real tears.
Yeah.
Like, it was tough. I remember when we were going through the orientation process, and he had to go up and talk to his advisors and stuff, and so they were encouraging the parents to kind of stand behind and let the child go and do it, and talk to them about what they want to major in and all that stuff. And so Josiah went up and he talked to his advisor, and I was just standing back there like, oh man, like I was just so, I don't know, it was good to see him to do that on his own. But then I knew like in the back of my mind that like, okay, wow, like we're really about to leave this place and leave our child here, so I just was I was all in my feelings, y'all. And so as we were walking away, the advisor, she came up to me and she was like, Mom, you did really good, she was like, I could tell you were struggling, but you did really good just letting him go forth and just kind of handle it on his own without you kind of coming up and making sure that everything was okay and that he was saying the right things and that he was requesting the right classes and stuff. So yeah, that was a moment, but I was emotional. I was all in my feelings. I was crying. So for all of y'all out there who have experienced, your child going off to college, I know you know what I mean. It's a real thing. So,
yeah.
But I've gotten better.
No, you have. Hey, and I'm interested in y'all thoughts on like mom-dad roles in part of this process. I remember people asking me, how do you feel? And I said, man, I'm excited for him to take this adventure of his life, and to navigate it, and I want to see how he does. I want to see, if what we're doing is enough. He has 2 younger brothers, so I was like, what we giving him is that enough? Or it helps us grow up. Like, okay, what lessons did you not get that we can give to your little brothers, so that when they go out, they're better prepared, right? Because if there was this handbook on parenting, The Perfect Parent, if one of y'all have bought that, please put the link in the comments and let us know where you got that, because
it doesn't exist.
You would save a lot of us some heartache and some pain. But I was excited about the process, and dads, you gotta still have that persona of tough and protector, and you know what? Yeah, I felt the absence of him being around, but I also felt the pride of, man, he's out there growing into a man, because the fact of the matter, they can't stay with us forever. They're probably not gonna want to. And so if we haven't given them those life lessons, then we're creating an environment to where they're not going to be prepared to move out when it's time to move out. And as dads, we tend to be more of the tough love, especially when it comes to boys. I don't have any girls, so I don't know how I would be with girls. You girl dad, let me know what it's like, because I know how I thought as a teenage boy. I know the stuff that was going through my head, and God knew what he was doing when he gave us all boys.
Because I know, like, for me growing up, like, the roles are reversed, because with men who have sons, like, of course they're kind of harder on them and all that, and then when you have daughters, it's like the moms are a little bit harder on the daughters and the dads are super soft. So I don't know, that's kind of like how it was for me. Like, my mom was like she didn't play, you know what I mean? And so my dad was kind of like, oh, you know, like daddy's little girl kind of in a sense.
Because I mean, when dads have girls, who's gonna walk her down the aisle, right?
Yeah.
That's like the time where you actually hand over responsibility to someone else to take care of daddy's little girl.
Right.
Boys don't have that to where they're let go,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's just, okay, here's the lessons, now you have to go and figure this out. But girls, no, dad walks her down the aisle and delivers her to her husband, and then the husband takes on the responsibility that the dad has always held. And so I think that's kind of the dynamic or how that plays out in that. What I'm also interested to hear from y'all is like, how do us dads or how do us men feel women can interfere with our process of raising boys? And then also, how can dads interfere with moms raising the girls?
Or raising the boys.
Yeah, or raising the boys. And so I specifically, I said it that way, right? Because I have boys.
Yeah.
We have boys. And so I know there are times where I will not do something or say something or pull back because I don't want it to cause some dissension between me and my wife. Or I'm not as tough as I know it needs to be because of how it's going to affect her. So yeah, what do y'all think? What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know what I think.
You can see that protective shell still holding on right there.
You know, those are my babies.
Yeah. Because I know the topic is letting grow without letting go. But at some point in time, there's that moment where you have to let grow while letting go. And I think that is the lessons where you try to teach your kids some lessons and they just won't receive it from you. I'm pretty sure some of us all have had this experience where either you didn't realize it was a good lesson until after you moved out and you faced it on your own, or parents probably most of our frustrations is where you can tell your child something and they won't receive it, and someone else can tell them the exact same thing you were trying to tell them and they receive it with open arms. And so I think in those moments is where you can let grow while letting go. Y'all's thoughts?
When our middle son was playing basketball and he was kind of, going through some stuff, and we had reached out to his coach to talk to him. You remember that? When we had reached out to his coach to talk to him because we were telling him things, but sometimes when it comes from your parents, it's just, you're kind of like, oh, it's my parents, like, they're always kind of saying something. But when you're able to hear it from someone else, maybe it's able to stick a little bit better. So
yeah, and I think that goes to it takes a community or a village to raise a child. Yep, kids look at their parents as overbearing sometimes, and these loud symbols that just nagging. And someone else can say the exact same thing. And they receive it.
They can't see yet, but we definitely have their best interests at heart. I know my mom always just tell me, just keep living. You'll see some of those same things that your parents used to tell you, and then you'll look back on it like, man, that's what they were talking about. That's what they were trying to say.
And I think that is part of the growth of parents, to realize that the end goal is for the kids to get the lesson. Regardless of where they get it from. You prefer they get it from you, but if someone's saying the exact same things you are, how can you dispute or argue with someone saying what you're saying?
Right.
Even though your child won't receive it from you, they will receive it from someone else. The goal is that they get the lesson and apply it to life.
Right. I also had another point, y'all, about helping with letting go. So when we first dropped off our son at college, obviously I told y'all it was rough for me, and I was struggling. So one thing that helped me was that when we went back to visit him, I saw that he had got in a rhythm and he was able to figure things out, the campus life and, his food situation, room situation, everything. He had figured everything out. So once we went back to visit him and I saw that, then I was like, okay, he got it, So just that part about letting go and just trusting your kids that if you already put the right things inside of them, then good things have to come out. So.
Yep. Hey, y'all, we get beat up with this stuff well before y'all get it. So.
Yeah.
As we minister to you or chat to you, believe me, the Holy Spirit has already beat us up about it.
Yeah. So we're growing too. We're growing, we're learning every day.
Here is the bright idea for you, or the good note for you. You'll never see the growth in your kid as long as you keep watching it. It's just like a plant. As long as you watch it, you'll never see its growth. It's not until you come back where you begin to recognize the growth.
Yeah. That's good. Good job, babe.
Go out there and continue to grow and know when and when not to let go.
Yeah. All right, y'all. Thank you for joining us on today's car chat, and we'll see y'all on the next one. We plan to do these probably like once a month. Y'all let us know if y'all have any topics that, we can kind of all talk about together, even in the comments and stuff. Just drop those below and we'll, pray about it and see what God says, and then we'll move forward from there. So yeah, y'all, thank you for joining us on today's vlog, and we'll see you on the next one. Peace.